Hey folks, welcome back to the Pulse. My name is Matt. This is Crypto Heartbeat, and it is 10 a.m. Central Texas time, and it is midnight in the Philippines, my friends. Folks, you know about the Thriller in Manila. You remember that? Well, you got one that's coming today. I've been waiting for this for a long time. We've been working on this for a long time, and I'm super excited to introduce you to John. Folks, I'll tell you what, it is amazing what is happening in this world. If you've paid any attention to Crypto Heartbeat or Brandon from Rags to Riches, you know that our focus as a team of people across the world is to tokenize communities. We've built an endowment contract, the first endowment contract on the blockchain. And we're going to tell you the story about how all this happened with the Philippines. And there couldn't be a place probably that's further away from Texas than where John is sitting right now. And it's amazing to me that in the East and in the West, that we come together as people created in the image of God, that we would come together to unlock abundance for people and advocate for those that are less fortunate. And so it is amazing. It's my honor. It's just such a joy to do this. And to me, this story is so compelling. John and his team, I want you to get a feel for it. But before we do that, I want to share with you a couple things. Do you know? I want to give you a little bit of background on the Philippines because not everybody knows. I mean, you see people talk about geography. Not so many people know their geography here. But I want to tell you something about the Philippines, and I think this is really interesting as we get into this interview. So, the national motto of the Philippines. Right now, I can't speak it. I don't know the language, the Tagalog. It is This is at least the English translation of the motto of the Philippines. So listen to this carefully. For the love of God, people, nature, and country. That's the official motto of the Philippines. For the love of God, people, nature, and country. And folks, for those of you who do not know where the Philippines is on a map, you need to know. Where's the Philippines, folks? It's right here. Do you know there's 4,761 some odd islands that make up the Philippines? It's amazing how many. So you think about that. Man, islands, some of the most beautiful beaches, some of the most beautiful people are in the Philippines. And guess what else is in the Philippines? Gold. Gold in the Philippines. And that is really the big metaphor that we're going to be talking about today. Where is the gold? And of course, in crypto, we talk about value as it's related to gold, right? We think about this. What is the treasure? And I would say to you, where you think it is, it isn't. It's in a surprising place. And that's what John is going to be sharing with you today, is all about their project in the Philippines. John is a fire starter. He goes by that name, and that is so true. It's amazing what names mean. You know, Richard Hart as a founder. Well, we've got John, and he's a fire starter. And he is literally sparking a fire in the hearts of people across the world, but to serve the people of the Philippines. And so it's such a joy and such an honor to have this opportunity to bring John onto Crypto Heartbeat and introduce you to this new community, which will be this is the second project of this endowment contract where we tokenize a community of people. But what I want to say at the top of all this is this. Some people say, well, why do we need projects? Well, you have heard from me, and you'll hear from me many times, that when you think about tokenization, in my opinion, there's not one ring to rule them all. There's not one ring, meaning there's not one token to rule them all. The value comes from community. The value in crypto comes from community. If it came from technology, we'd be able to flip a switch and it would all just work. Well, it might work technically, but it doesn't have value unless a group of people that are in community and they're in unity of thought and they literally collectively declare the value. And that's what's so special about crypto, is that community is everything. That's where the value is, because value is created and perceived between parties of people. And so, folks, we're going to have ourselves a little party of our own. Keep in mind, Hex has probably maybe 200,000 individual people, right? There's holders. There's probably getting close to 400,000 holders. You figure they have multiple wallets. That's not a lot of people, folks. And there's billions in value. So the people of Philippines, the story that John's going to bring to you, the people that he is advocating for, this is an enormous amount of people. And it's a way in which we literally take crypto to the people who are already in community. Folks, get ready for this. It is my honor and my pleasure to welcome my very good friend, John, the FireStarter. What's going on, man?
What is up, brother? Finally,
We're doing
right?
it. We're doing
I
it.
know. My gosh.
Man, I
Amen, brother.
absolutely love it, man. Talk about a guy with a heart of gold, and that is you. And it's been such a pleasure. We met quite a while ago.
It's been almost a year now.
Yeah,
It's
a
like
year ago.
April, March of last year, sometime
Yeah.
around that.
So amazing. Well, I want people to get to know you, to understand you, and we're going to talk about you first, and then we'll talk about your project, and then the people that the project serves. But give us a little bit of background on John. Who's John, man?
Sure. So my name is John Blaylock. I was born and raised in the Philippines. I come from a family of business people. My name is actually associated with the automotive industry because my grandmother started a network of dealers and brought the Mitsubishi brand to prominence in the Philippines. And that was quite a feat because Mitsubishi is not like the number one brand in any other country, but in the Philippines, it actually was at one point like the most prominent brand. And so, so my father expanded that to include other brands, and at one point was the president of the Philippine Automotive Association for some time. So, I mean, you could say that I was, born with a silver spoon in my mouth. We lived in, one of the richest places, a gated village called Forbes Park. It was my grandmother's home, which was, it was a number of lots like put together. And so, yeah, man, I mean, I was a pretty spoiled kid, pretty purposeless kid until
That all changed,
um,
right?
oh boy. Did it. So, I mean, until I reached high school, I would say, where, I got into partying, and then that became a real priority for me. I popularity, being in the right social circles, and I was a pretty popular kid myself. Me and my girlfriend at the time, we won prom king and queen at like
Nice.
her high school, my high school, and so at that point, I was all about that, just being and maintaining all these like social cliques and groups of friends, and then eventually, that uh, things just started falling apart because I was partying so hard. It got to the point where I had friends who OD'd. I could have lost my life a number of times. I was chased by the cops. I've run straight through a toll booth without realizing it. My car at one point 360 in the highway. I mean, so many times that
This is why Brandon likes you, by the way, this story. Just so you know. This is why you got street cred to him.
Really? Does he even know this? I didn't know he
No,
knew
I'm
this
teasing. I'm teasing.
Okay.
He's a man of the people.
Yeah, so I got to the point where it just became very clear to me that something needed to change. I was kicked out of like all the good schools, and at one point my folks were like, get your act together or we're kicking you out of the house. And so I got really desperate and was trying to change my life, and just couldn't get it together. And my parents, at around that point, this was when I was, around college days, they started attending a Bible study, and they had their stuff too. They were going through all kinds of stuff, and I saw changes happening in their lives, and so I was like, yeah, okay, I'll give this a try. I tried everything. I was seeing shrinks and priests and counselors and whoever, and so started attending a Bible study, and for the first time understood what the gospel message was. I was raised a Catholic. I was even active in like Catholic youth groups, but never really read the Bible. And so that was what really sparked the change. I remember vividly, like one time when I disappeared for a few days, and this was like a perennial. This used to happen all the time. My parents were looking for me and calling all my friends and their parents trying to find me, uh, and eventually I came home and I was just like totally off, like strung out on whatever, and I opened the front door and my mom was there and she was just crying and just saying why, and I remember I could barely talk. I just walked, straight through to my room, my bathroom, fell on the floor, and just started praying. And
Mm.
was like, God, if you're there, if you're real, um, if what the Bible says is true, then you need to come in here. You need to do something because I can't do this anymore.
Wow.
I just can't. And and it was quite surreal because I remember there was so this was around like um early morning, and there was a ray of sunlight that just like shot through my bathroom window and hit my eyes and warmed my face, and I remember just thinking that's the Lord. He's
Mm.
saying that he is there and he's answering your prayer. And so yeah, things started changing from there. One of the first things that happened was that I began to grow a real distaste for wealth because I just saw the problems that it brought. I mean, for myself, and then even in my family, my grandmother, just strained relationships with relatives and all kinds of. So I went a completely different route. I mean, I told my parents that I wanted to become a musician. They were not too happy to hear that. And I was, from as far back as I can remember, they were all telling me that I was going to be succeeding my father because I'm the eldest, right?
Mm.
So um, that was being spoken to me and over my life from when I was very, very young. And
The prodigal son.
yeah. So so yeah, I mean, my folks were like, hell no, right? I mean, you finish school, get then we'll talk. Because I was actually, see, this is how immature Christian I was. I was asking them to pay for music school for me.
Yeah.
And so anyways, I got into a good school in the UK, and so I finished business course, did my master's, and then I started a band. And I was in a punk rock band. We were
Nice.
touring uh, the UK, some parts of Europe, even this. We ended up in the States even at some point, and it was like an evangelistic kind of band, right? Because I felt that the Lord had impressed on my heart that He wanted me to bring the gospel to the darkest places, the light of the gospel to the darkest places. And so we were playing in like Hell's Angels bars, and like people were snorting blow. I was talking to them about Jesus, that those
Yeah.
kinds of situations. And then eventually I became a worship pastor. So I was the worship pastor for a church in London, in South Kensington, for about 4 years. And and then I actually got kicked out of the church. So what happened was I was newly married, and my wife, she wasn't a Christian when I met her. She became a Christian through me. So she didn't take anything for granted. Like, she started asking tough questions, like, "Why it says this in the scriptures? Why are we teaching this?"
Yeah.
Right? And so, and there were a number of things that I started questioning as well. And anyways, the sum of it was, it was quite a traumatic experience for me because the climax was that I let a homeless guy sleep in the church office, and they just flipped out about that. And so that fell apart. I ended up moving on from the church. My folks heard about all that, and so my dad flew to the UK. He flew to London, And this was around 2013, 2014, and asked me to come back. And he was like, everybody's um, waiting for you. The partners, the Mitsubishi is asking when you're going to come back. I'll, you're, this is, we need help. We need your help. And um, this is what I believe you're meant to do, and give it a shot, right? You've never given it a chance,
Yeah.
is what he said. And he also said that, he would, he promised me that, um, we would be able to, that he would get serious with his faith as well, because he and my mom were going through stuff. And
Yeah.
anyway, so Carmen and I, we had a long and hard think about it, and eventually decided that we would fly to the Philippines and give it a shot, which was a tough call for us, because like she was, her career was taking off. So she was a fashion photographer. She was taken under the wing of someone really high up in Canon. And at that point, I was also being offered to be trained to take a position in a church, a pretty prominent church that was planted by John MacArthur's
Hmm.
church. I'm
Sure.
a big fanboy of John MacArthur,
Sure.
man.
Sure.
Um, and so yeah, so we gave that up. We decided to come home to the Philippines, and uh, being the kind of guy that I am, I just went gave it my all, went all in. But it's an old company. It's been around for decades. The people that were there have also been around for decades, and again, it was just a very, very difficult time. It was actually some of the most traumatic periods of my life, because um, you know, I- it got to the point where people were lying about me, and people were undermining all the initiatives that I was trying to get up off the ground. And unfortunately, these are the people that my father trusted. And but the amazing thing is that, like, if I hadn't gone through what I went through in the UK, right? I don't think I would have been prepared for that.
Yeah.
Um, so eventually that ended with, my department was fired. I was kicked out of the family business,
Hey,
pretty
there's a
much.
theme here.
I know there's a pattern here, dude.
But it's a good ending. It's a good story.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you see how the Lord's hand was, I mean, when you're there, obviously it's horrific and so difficult. But and my gosh, I mean, if not for my wife, and seriously, like, the support that she showed me, and her faith as well. I mean, as a fairly new believer, the way she matured so quickly, and was just such a strong pillar for me through those times. And yeah, it was bad, dude. I was on like 7 or 8 antidepressants a day. I was like, dude, it was really bad. And
Well, and you know what I
uh,
think is great about this is there's so many people, and I feel like in our community, what I love about Hex and Pulse community is we can relate to you. You know what I mean? I often say that, and I've heard it said that, it's not that the Jews were called out of Egypt, it's that we're all being called out of our own personal Egypt, that we're in bondage, right? And that whether it be what you're dealing with, and but what's amazing about it is all of these things become redeemed. Not only us as humans, but us and all of these experiences we have been redeemed. And that's what I think is so cool about this conversation, because all of these stories actually feed back into what is being done in this project. And to me, that's what I love about your story and your heart for people, because you're such an advocate. What I think, we won't have a chance to go into all the detail around this, but what I've noticed in you is the fact that you care about the truth and you advocate for people who are struggling. And I hadn't heard that story about you having the homeless guy sleep in the office and that was an issue. But this is who John is, folks. Is a heart for people, is a heart for those that are suffering, and partly because you've suffered yourself.
exactly, that's what I was gonna say. I mean, I've been through that, and in fact, to the point where it was my heroes, the people who I loved the most, like, this might be too strong a way of putting it, but kind of turned on me, right?
Yeah.
And so I it's very, very, I know intimately what it's like to be excluded, to be, um, you know, uh, yeah, to go through stuff like that. And so, um, yeah, so what happened was, I continuing on, like, after the family business, my uncle was kind enough to give us some work. We started a digital marketing agency, and we did some work for him. Then eventually my dad, asked me to come back and give it another shot. And we decided that we would give it another try. He said things would change, but um, it was the same story. Same people were there, and that was around the time when the pandemic hit.
Mm.
And so another thing, right, that the Lord had done through those experiences was, I felt that He gave me a real sensitivity to when the truth was being hidden,
Yes.
because that's what happened in the church, and even in Diamond, in my
Mhm.
the family business, right? There were things that I was uncovering, and so um, when the pandemic hit, right? I mean, immediately, like, I was really skeptical of the mainstream narrative, and many of the researchers that I had started following. So I consider myself a researcher, really. I have a real passion for truth. Ever since, like, I first became a Christian, I
Yeah.
got deeply into apologetics and studying the accuracy of the original manuscripts and all that stuff, right? And so, I've been down very many rabbit holes, right? Not quite as deep as you, brother, with like with the
Careful.
shape of the earth, for example.
Yeah, yeah. We
I
won't
won't.
go there. We'll save that for another time.
Yeah. So, and many of the researchers that I started trusting, like, they were all in alignment about this, right? That there was stuff that was off, and so I started, building relationships with people at the grassroots level, people who were working to help, because there was such devastation. I mean, here in the Philippines, just
Well, and when you tell me this, see, this is one of the things when we started talking, we obviously were in the thick of all of the pandemic. And the thing you said to me
yeah,
that stuck
yeah.
out to me was that you found yourself going to so many funerals, and it wasn't just for old people who got sick. Tell us about that, because there was
Oh
that
boy.
really stuck with me that you felt, and you said this even before kind of I started hearing it in the media, that hold on a second, people are dying that shouldn't be dying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go too deep into that controversial stuff, but yes, and the people who, because I was on the ground, right? I was working with churches who work in the poorest areas, and what the rich people experience was very different
Yeah.
from what these people in the poor areas were experiencing. They just didn't have a voice, right? I mean, they just couldn't speak up, and um, like Pastor Roy, who's the chairman of our partner, right? Of our main partner, Gem Effect for Ophir. So he was one of the guys who I met and started working alongside, and he has a medical background, and so yeah, he was sharing all of these stories of how that, like, I was meeting people, like real people who were having, who had like two, three people passing away in their circles, like in a span of, a few weeks. And I mean, and to be honest, that hasn't really stopped, dude.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so whatever. I'm not a doctor. I'm not, but
Sure.
but that was my experience on the ground. I
Yeah.
mean, and to them, I mean, these guys, and that was what was so special also about this, like, just the communities that I was with, especially this particular group of churches, because um they stood firm on what they believed to be true. Well, all that was happening, because you were really persecuted if you held to any convictions other than what the mainstream
Yeah.
was rolling out, right? In fact, Pastor Roy got a lot of flack from other Christians, from other churches, all of the mega churches, all of the larger churches were on board with what was going on, but it was the churches in the poorer areas that,
Yeah.
it was a different story. And so, yeah, I saw the devastation that was happening, and just really had a heart to help and to make a difference. But I felt I wouldn't be able to do it while I was in the family business, because I was being treated as an employee, and
Yeah.
and in order to make an impact, I needed the resources to do it. And so Carmen and I decided, we took a step of faith, and we decided to move on from the family business. And wow, man, that was another really tremendously difficult period
Yeah.
of our lives, man. And well enough, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
really. And just for all of your listeners, I mean, this man here walks the talk. I mean, if not for the support that he gave us and the tremendous blessing that he was to us, I don't know that we would have gotten through. I mean, because this was the first, I didn't have any savings. I mean, I was coming home to succeed my father. There's this massive group of businesses. Like, why am I going to like save money? I mean,
Yeah.
and finance was like the furthest thing from my mind. Right. And so, so I left the family business, and, first principle thinking, like, how can I build wealth in the quickest way possible? Right. Just starting from scratch. And and eventually landed on blockchain, and was like, this is absolute, there's no other place,
That's right.
like no space, no industry, no nothing, where you're going to be able to achieve your full economic potential the way that you can with blockchain, right? But of course, what I didn't know is, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, right? Just in the same way that you can make truckloads of money, you can lose your shirt, which is just what happened to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I like we had there was one condominium that was assigned to me and my wife, my family, but it was still, it was still in my it wasn't in our name, and so I had to fight tooth and nail to get it transferred over, and eventually it was. And that was the only capital that we had, and so I sold that. That's all I knew how, to do. I sold that and went all in at the top of the bull market. Like, dude,
Yeah.
seriously.
Yeah. You learn a lesson there, don't you?
Oh my gosh, man.
Yeah.
Really. And so we went through really hard times, as you know. I mean, it was rough. Like, at one point, I mean, I was contemplating selling our wedding rings. I
Mhm.
was like looking at, I mean, this guitar
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see it over here.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
Stratocaster. That's the only guitar I've ever had. So it's like 20 plus years old, and there's real attachment to it. I remember one time looking at it and just starting to tear, and like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to sell this.
Yeah.
Like, how are we gonna buy groceries? How are we gonna, like,
Yeah.
um, but then, just dug our heels in, because we felt strongly that the Lord had called us to this,
Yeah.
right? And I had never prayed so much in my life. My gosh, man, hours upon hours with my
Yeah.
face to the ground. And sure enough, man, I mean, the Lord came through, one thing after the other. Our private equity firm, the crypto investment firm that I started, 3Lock, just started doing well. I met you, of course, and you came in like at the perfect time, man. Like, seriously, like, I looked at that, and it's like the hand of God, like, literally reaching in, and so, yeah, man, and the rest is history. I mean,
Yeah.
and we are where we are now, and it's just God truly is doing exceedingly abundantly more than we could ever ask for or imagine. And
Yep.
so, yeah, man.
One of the things I've learned in my life is that we have to let go before we receive. And I feel like some of us are stubborn, right? You and I and others are very, very stubborn. And in some cases, we have to be emptied out, right? Because there's a calling. And, what you realize is all of these things that have ever happened in your life. And I think anyone who watches this, if you don't know this, is that you're not alone. You're not an accident. All this stuff is purposeful, and you go your own way. You have a choice, but you go your own way because you're like, I can handle this. And you get to the point where your life's unmanageable, and you realize, okay, and you lose it all, and you're like, I'm at the very bottom, right? And God doesn't give up on you. And what he does is he sees you in all of that. It says the eyes of the Lord search to and fro to find those whose hearts are completely his, so that he may strengthen them. And I feel like we have to get to this point where we have nothing, because when we do that, he has this opportunity to rebuild us in the way in which honors him. versus lifts ourselves up. And so it's hard for me to trust anybody who hasn't gone through, major difficulty or tragedy, because you don't have the perspective of saying, hold on, you still think it's in your own strength that this wealth is built. You think it's through your own hands that all of these things come, and they do not. You can get things, right? You can get things and win Lambo and those type of things. But I think what's really cool about you is that what I gather from your story and spending the last year with you is that your heart is an advocate for the truth and for people who are struggling. And so I want to formally give the people what they want. And that is ultimately, what is this project, John? What's it called? And tell us about it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So it's called Ophir, right? And Ophir is the ancient land in the Bible that Solomon sourced the best gold from to build the temple. So, it's a symbol of abundance. It's and there are researchers who believe that the Philippines is the land of Ophir,
Yeah.
right? So and it ties in very well with blockchain, because I mean, you look at the Philippines, right? Such a rich, well resourced place. Gold, like you've mentioned, like
Yeah.
everyone here knows that there's so much gold here, and yet you see the people and what they're going through and the kind of poverty that happens here. And it's the same story, right, as what the blockchain enables, this shift from centralization, this removal of the gatekeepers. And that's what we want to see happen. And so our tagline is mining hearts of gold, and we believe that the true gold of Ophir is having a heart of service, and as you say over and over again, right, just not minding your own concerns, but being thoughtful of others as well, right? And as you say over and over again, that at the end of the day, the strength of a project, of a cryptocurrency or whatever, it's in community, it's in caring um, about others besides yourself, and not just wanting to get mine. And so I think what sets this project apart really is it's the values, and the model that we're pursuing is in partnership with a massive group of churches. So we're going to be allocating these tokens to literally thousands of churches. And it's funny though, because they they really struggle with, well, first of all, it's very difficult to get crypto into churches.
Right.
Uh,
Right. Right.
like, I mean, seriously, because many have been scammed, like here in the
Sure.
Philippines. And but you see, once again, you see the Lord's hand in all of this, because when I was on the ground, like doing what I was to help with the pandemic situation, I ended up building relationships with a number of leaders of churches and very influential people in the evangelical world, and guys who are really working on the grassroots level. So I established a lot of trust and credibility. And so then when this project came about, right, it's like the doors were wide open, because like Pastor Roy, for example, right? So Gem Effect is our main partner, right? Well, we have two partners: is Gem Effect and United Christian Broadcasters, because the CEO is a good friend of mine who I've done ministry with, like for ages, and they're about the same things and hold to the same values. And but Pastor Roy, right, of Gem Effect, is the chairman of Gem Effect. It's a council of about 40 churches. And so he is also the treasurer of an organization called Cavite for Jesus Movement. And that church alone has almost 3,000 members. Sorry, churches.
Yeah.
Has almost
Yeah.
3,000 churches. That's just one organization, right?
Yep.
Like all of these leaders in this council have are part of organizations that are just as big, spread out throughout the entire country.
Yeah.
And so it was God's hand that led me to this organization, to build relationships with these guys so that they could see my heart, so that churches would immediately, they could share their stories of what we've been through, so the doors would be open. Because yeah, I'll tell you, man, there's a lot of resistance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me pause for a second, and also I want to put an exclamation point on the name Ophir, on the story here, and I want you also to know, and John knows this very well. This story And the name Ophir and what Ophir means and meeting John and all of this stuff fits into the calling on my life, which is to unlock global generosity. I haven't been out of the States much at all. And to think that on the other side of the planet, here's a guy, John, who's willing to lead and found a token to advocate for the people of the Philippines and really people across the world who see an opportunity that is illustrated in this concept of Ophir. So let me give you this perspective. So in the biblical stories about where the wealth of Solomon came from, I want to remind people that what Solomon prayed for was wisdom, and he's the writer of the majority of the Proverbs. So if you read the Proverbs, you've heard a lot of them before, I'm sure, just in popular culture. But Solomon prayed for wisdom. He didn't pray for money. And in that, he was given so much. And I think that there's a big story and lesson in that, is that we should have money in its proper place. But here's something I think is really curious, and we see this across the Philippines, we see this across the Middle East, is there are centralized parties who are in control of the resources, right? And so whether it be oil and gas in Saudi Arabia or in those places, or even Western people like the United States wanting to get a hold of contracts in that, what we're fighting in Ukraine to try to, topple Russia, it's because of the minerals, the oil and gas, and the centralization of wealth. And so if you go into the Philippines, it is amazing. I'm an amateur geologist and know that that area is just absolutely abundant in gold. And of course, throughout history, this is where Solomon's gold came from. Now, there are people who debate that, but the best researchers are saying, hey, this came from the Philippines. And so if you think about it from that perspective, that this is a place in which, Solomon, who is David's son, who built the first temple, is the one who got the gold of Ophir. And gold is obviously something that has represented wealth for a long, long time. But here's what's so incredible about the blockchain, and why to me this matters so much, and why I feel like it is such a gift to us, is that centralized parties can go get the yellow stuff in the ground. But the only way we unlock the gold in the hearts of men and women and mine it out of people's hearts is in community. And so if you look at the gospel message and the story of the church, it is a group of people who are like-minded, who came together, they broke bread, they committed themselves to the apostles' teaching. They literally, if somebody had need, they shared with them. And so this idea that, no, you think that the physical gold is what the value is. No, that gold is actually in your heart. And so the blockchain enables us in community to unlock an abundance of value in community. And so this is the most amazing thing. There's more value in the hearts of the men and women across the Philippines and the world than there is in the ground of the Philippines. And I want you to hear that loud and clear. This is a complete transformation of the financial system, but it's also a complete transformation of the hearts of people, because we have outsourced loving each other to the state. And all across the world, we've said, oh, the government's going to take care of you. And in fact, that is a failed bit. And so the cryptocurrency and the blockchain and decentralization, DeFi, has enabled us to say, let us come together in community. And those places where community exists, John is partnered with Gem Effect and with these other groups that have over 3,000 churches. One of the things I think is so incredible about your ideas and concepts of how do you go about getting token to people who are going to actually care. The thing that strikes me is that in the West, we think we know what money is. We think we know what a lot of money is. I've seen things in the Philippines that are literally abject poverty, people living in absolute squalor. Meanwhile, they're sitting on top of ground that contains some of the greatest riches ever, but they're inaccessible. The blockchain enables us to come together in community and actually mine it through our own community, our own declaration or fiat by decree. And so what I think is so incredible about the name Ophir, its connection to value, but also in this new financial system, unlocking this gold in the hearts of men and women across the world, but primarily to serve the people of the Philippines. Will you share with people this idea of giving endowments to churches and what that looks like, because there's going to be a whole
Oh my
process that comes
gosh.
out over time. But tell me
Yeah.
about that, and tell me your experiences with these churches, because you've been in these
Yeah.
churches.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so, you know, I really think that the partner that we have, Gem Effect, that these guys, that they're really they really emulate the values that we want to espouse. Because as I mentioned, like, through the lockdowns, right? I mean, people were starving, dude. I mean, and the people who were really affected were the poor, right? I mean, those who had wealth were still comfortable. We had stuff delivered to us. We were like, it wasn't a big deal at all. But these poor people and people who needed to work daily to earn a wage, right? I mean, they were starving. And so the pastors of this group, like, they even under threat of whatever fines or whatever, I mean, they were going out like to these poor people. They were, giving early treatment. They were giving goods, and a lot of these guys are seniors even,
Yeah.
and they were out, like just caring for people and helping people. And so, they're hard. I was just really, really moved by that. And you mentioned, the situation here, like as far as like the kind of poverty. And I mean, and this is part of the reason why we're quite specific with our verbiage when we say that we want to allocate these tokens to churches that are operating in the grassroots level. Because unfortunately, there is a schism. I mean, many of these well-resourced churches and these mega churches, and they're not the guys that are out there
Yeah.
that are, working with the poorest of the poor. And there's a pragmatism that's come into the church where, in I mean, if you want to do well for yourself, you reach out to rich people,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yep.
they're the ones with the money. They can tithe. And I've felt that. I've been on both ends of that spectrum, right? So coming from the family that I have, when we first became believers, and I mean, people just, you know flocked towards us and put us in positions of leadership immediately. And whereas when I was in the UK, in a punk rock band and with piercings and my camo
Yeah.
shorts and whatever, I was treated very differently, in the area, the churches that I'd visited in richer areas. And so here, that's very evident when you talk to a lot of these pastors. In fact, to the point that it pains them, because many of these guys, they've given up well-paying jobs, right? I mean, many of them were OFWs, or overseas Filipino workers, engineers, and have come back here to work in these areas. And I mean, there are amazing stories, Matt. Like, I'm sure you'll have these guys on at some point. But like, I'll give you a couple, like Pastora Sikat, for example, right? A lady in one of these churches, who she's like over 80 years old, dude, and she goes around the poorest areas in her like e-trike
Yep.
and does Bible studies with people, travels like 5 hours to some mountain to reach out to people, a couple of times a week. As in, there's this guy, Pastor Ben Notario. I was just at his church today, actually. And I mean, this guy risked his life, spreading the gospel, and trying to bring in uh, Bibles to the Middle East. Those are the kinds of stories. This is the kind of dedication that these people have, and the kinds of problems that they're facing as well. I mean, Pastor Zeni, like Pastora Zeni, their church was praying for months for a table, and they get bananas as tithes. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
like, these are the kinds of churches that, and the kinds of people that they're reaching out to, that really do not. I mean, a pair of sneakers, the money it would cost to buy a pair of sneakers in the States would feed a family here in these areas for, a couple of months or something. It's pretty ridiculous,
What's amazing to me about this, and this idea that there's going to be a donation phase eventually. We don't have a date yet for it, but anyone who donates, those dollars are going to this organization, not to John, right? Not to us, just
absolutely.
like with the Texan token is an organization that's serving people. But here's the coolest thing about this. And this is what I love about your strategy and approach, John, is that the idea is to come into these areas giving gifts, right? And I think of the wise men who came and gave the gifts to Jesus. This idea that you're come bearing gifts and you come bearing money through this organization, but also an endowment. And so, folks, to get very specific with you, Ophir is using the same contract, our contract from the Texan token that we created, and this is being used in different places. So this is an endowment token. And what will happen is they will be given token to stake. And the whole idea is that they would be able to, as people adopt and as value is created, and of course, we're going to come into a next bull run, this could literally transform these communities. And what John is illustrating to you is the fact that it doesn't take a whole lot to make a huge difference. And, so many people around the world are like, how do we change the system? How do we serve people? Because the people that have control want to maintain control. And this is where regular people come together, people across the world. It may be Filipino people. It may be anyone who cares about, people that are oppressed, and literally being able to say, hold on, John and his group and GemmaFac and others are going to be going into these remote churches, going into these places and giving them resources, but also token that can be staked so that ultimately they have cash flow. That's the whole point of an endowment. So the scraping function from the Ophir contract is the same scraping function. They will be able to utilize that interest, lock up their principal. But I just have a dream, and I really believe that this is something God has called us to, is that when you unlock generosity, these people, when you talk about an 80-year-old woman who goes around on her trike and goes all these places, these are the real generous people. In the Bible, it talks about the widow's mite. She gave more than the people who are wealthy. There are people across the world that are serving like this. And you think about what happens when she has resources.
Yeah.
What happens when she can actually make, and have these resources? So the beauty of the blockchain and how all this stuff comes together in unlocking, right? Mining gold in the hearts of people it's such a beautiful idea that says, hold on a second, we no longer have to be under the hand of the centralized authorities, but we together can work to unlock something that is inherent in us. And in my opinion, that's the very value of the creative force that God has given us in his image. And dude, I'm going to tell you, this is one of the most beautiful stories, in my opinion, especially because it goes back to Solomon. It's called Ophir. It's related to gold. And then it's serving people who are literally on the edge. And in a time where we may see much, much more unrest. And so, dude, I'm just so thankful to have met you. It's such an honor and a blessing that you're carrying out this cause, because it's like where the rubber meets the road, man.
I mean, the impact that we're going to be having is tremendous, Matt. Like, my gosh, when I think about it, really, that the number of churches that we are going to be able to bless with this, the number of lives that are going to be impacted by this here, the difference that it's going to make.
The other thing that really strikes me about you too is, look at this. You come from this wealthy family. You go through this time of separation, right? You go through this time of struggle. You see truth. You're an advocate for people. And then you get emptied out. Literally, you got nothing. You're at the absolute end of yourself financially, which is the irony of it all, right? You go from being, in a family to being literally, I got to sell my guitar or my wedding rings. And what I love about that is God has taught you this lesson and given you a heart for people because you've been in that situation. But also, you have relationships across the country and across the world with people who have tremendous resource. And so what I want to encourage people, the projects that we're going to be sharing with you that utilize this endowment contract, this is not so that we can, hey, maybe we can get the Hex and Pulse community involved. No, we want you to be aware of what's going on. But one of the things we've made a commitment to is that the people that are a part of Texan, meaning the people that stake and hold Texan, are going to be blessed by Ophir. because there is a relationship between these things. This won't be the last project we do, but this is the essence of all the projects that we do, is that the value is in the hearts of people in community. And we're going to the places where people are already in community. And when you're in need, and when you're struggling and when you need help, there's nothing greater than somebody that is there with resources and a word in the name of the Lord. And to me, when I saw the national motto of the Philippines, John, I was just
You
stunned.
know, yeah,
Stunned.
we're like the only like it's interwoven in everything in our national anthem. Like God is everywhere. We're the only Christian, predominantly Christian nation. I think we're like 80%, Christian. Just very, it's just really ingrained. In
Yeah.
fact, here's an interesting thing. So our original alphabet, which is called Alibata, apparently is very similar to Hebrew. So
Oh, I'm
there's
sure. Yeah. That's
yeah, so
another
there's
reason
interesting
that
stuff
Ophir is
there.
likely the place. Very, very good point.
Interesting stuff there, man. And so Filipinos are really God-fearing people, and they're all over the world, dude.
Right.
That's the other thing, Matt. I mean, apparently about 10% of our workforce is abroad, hospitals. We have more people on ships than any other nationality. So we're all over the world. And so just by the nature of like this being focused on Filipinos, I mean this will be international, right? This is going to impact the world. So
Well, it's a beautiful story. I love your heart for it. And it's just so exciting to introduce you to the community. So, Ophir is the next project that we will be supporting. It's utilizing the endowment contract. Let's talk about the timeline. There's going
sure.
to be a donation phase to GemEffect and to the other organization. The money does not go to John, it does
Yeah.
not go to us, it
Mm.
goes to this group of people. And the whole reason we do these donation phases is one, to bless the people on the ground, but two, to have people who care about this cause to be a part of token distribution. So when you give, and so that will be coming out. What kind of timeline are we thinking about, John?
We'll probably start the donation phase and maybe I'd say the soonest would be like a month.
Okay.
A month, 6 weeks, somewhere thereabouts. We're just making sure that everything is lined up. And so yeah, that's the time frame we're looking at. But man, like the excitement, the community is just like this is going to spread like wildfire. And I don't know if you know about this, but there's a real viral factor to like Filipinos.
Yeah.
And when it comes to networks, when it comes to, and even
Yeah.
crypto, right? We're
Yeah.
way up there, right? With Axie Infinity, we were like
Yeah.
the
Well,
number one
Yeah.
nationality that
Well,
adopted.
Philippines, if you look at adoption of MetaMask,
Yeah, there you go.
US
Yeah,
is number one. Number two is the Philippines because of Axie Infinity. And so,
yeah,
isn't that crazy, folks? That the people you wouldn't expect, that the Philippines is the second most concentrated adoption of MetaMask, which I think is really bodes well for you. And the fact that there are people who have already kind of cut their teeth in crypto, it's
yeah,
not as much.
exactly.
But this is ultimately, if you think about this, we hope the Pulse chain launches soon and we
I
can
was just
launch on
gonna
the Pulse chain,
Yeah,
right?
well, I was just gonna bring that up, man.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I am on a mission to because no one here knows about pulse chain,
Yeah.
dude. And so, I mean, that is low hanging fruit when people get wind of this, and we're working on it, right? We have like I started the Pulse Chain Philippines Telegram group, and um, I shared this with you and the team, right? Like a few weeks ago, I attended this Bitcoin event, started going out there to network and stuff, and found out that a lot of the Bitcoin OGs from here are like old friends of mine or
Yeah.
childhood friends of mine from way back. So
Wow.
I'm working to onboard these guys now, and yeah, we're looking, we're looking for devs because this is, like you said, this is going to be the first of many projects, man. And I really think that Pulse Chain is going to explode here,
Yep.
dude. Like,
Absolutely. I agree. So here's the call to action for folks. So if you go to ophir.app, okay, and I'm going to put up the banner that has that in it, ophir.app. So if you want to be a part of this, you can go to ophir.app. Will find a link to their Telegram. Here's the thing, guys. This is DeFi. This is true, straight up DeFi. There's no organization. There's, obviously we got a founder in John. We're going to support you from Texan and from our our team, but we're decentralized. We don't have a company. We are people who come together. So if you're somebody who wants to support, you're somebody that wants to help, let's say in Telegram, or you want to be somebody who volunteers, that you can reach out to folks in their Telegram to offer that support. They need that help.
We need the help.
Yeah, yeah, and it will come. It will
This is
come.
it's a gargantuan task that we have ahead of us, man.
Yeah,
I mean, especially on the education front, because that's going to be a big part of what we need to do, right?
yeah,
Educating these churches, and a lot, these are all no coiners, right? These
yeah.
are all going to be new guys who most of them have never heard of crypto before, and so I mean, yeah, we need help
You
for
know what?
sure.
You know what excites me, and I've told you this from the very beginning. I imagine I always talk about Balliet Brand saying, "Hey, remember when you put in $100 and it turns into $1,000,000?" And I was thinking about this, because the nature of Hex going at 10,000x. One, tokenomics are important, right? Buying and holding is important, but the second is it has to be bonded and tied to value that's moving up. And we know that Bitcoin and Ethereum are the core, and everything kind of follows that when it comes to the asset class. We're at the bottom of the market, the greatest time to possibly ever launch. But that imagine this. This is what I think about. I think about a family in a remote part of the Philippines who attends a church, right? And maybe they got extended family, and it's just a family, and they're not rich, they're not, they can eat, but they have dreams and they have kids and they want a future. And I imagine the whole family, all the people in the family contribute, and maybe they are able to scratch up $100 of USD, right? And imagine that scenario, that could there be a scenario just like Balliet Brand experienced, where a family in a remote part of Philippines scratches together $100 and they wait, and it turns into $1,000,000. I mean, I'm not saying there's any forward-looking statements, we know anything about it, but
Mhm.
that is really the hope. Is that's the
Yeah.
unlocking part of this, is that you don't have to go to the government for a handout. This is something that if you want to engage with an immutable contract, you can. But it illustrates the point you made. Education's everything, because if you don't know about this, you can't benefit from it. And I love it because we don't sell something to someone. We tell
Yeah.
people, like, one beggar helping another beggar find food.
Mhm.
And the
Mhm.
food is in your heart, the gold in the hearts of men and women. Dude, it's amazing to me. Amazing to me. So if you want to volunteer, check them out at ophir.app. That's just a splash screen that's up on the web right now. The Telegram link is actually underneath right here. Connect with us on Telegram. It's
Yeah.
Ophir Crypto. So t.me/Ophir Crypto. They'd love to welcome you in that Telegram chat. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, this is fantastic. But donation phase in a month or two probably lasts for 60 to 90 days.
Yeah.
Obviously, then here's the other thing I want people to be aware of, and we learned this with Texan, is if the Pulse chain's not out, we're going to launch on Ethereum.
Well, there's a real need, right? I mean,
Yeah,
there's a in fact, Gemafec, right, was just evicted from where they're staying.
yeah,
They're building, which it's a sad story, but this happens so much with these churches, right? I mean, there was no contract. They wanted a contract. The person
yeah.
said there's no need for one, and now they're being asked to leave
Wow.
just like that, right? And there's a lot of issues with land, land grabbing here, and titles being,
Yeah,
all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I mean, there is an urgency, right? and
yeah.
and also given just what's happening in the world, I mean, um yeah.
Well, folks, join that Ophir Telegram if you're interested in this. This is special to me. I'm going to be talking about Ophir now all the time because I absolutely love this story. I really feel like, and because it's attached to the church, and so I just want to share with you. There's this idea of a church, and then there's a physical church, right? And spiritually, the church is anyone who believes, right? So these are believers across the world. That's what's called the universal church. It's people who care and believe. And then there's the physical locations in communities. And the physical location of churches, it's the largest single organization on the planet Earth, is the local church. You go to places and there's not a post office, there's not a grocery store, but there's a church. And there's a community of people who are serving each other. And in places like the Philippines, where there's not some robust social safety net, this is an opportunity to unlock value for people so they can serve one another. And so this is just the beginning of something extremely special. But I truly believe that the tool of the blockchain, and that's all it is a gift to us to unlock this value for people who have been marginalized. If people, all the people in Hex and Pulse, all of the people that have gone through troubles and trials like you have, John.
And you think of how many people are unbanked in the
Oh,
Philippines.
yeah.
My gosh, right? And for them to have access to something like this, I mean, yeah, it's just layer upon layer upon
It's
layer.
tremendous. It's tremendous. Well, I want to say hello to some people in the chat. You got some friends in here. I'm just going to run through some things here before we sign off. John, this has been an absolute pleasure. I'm so excited
Same,
that we got a
man.
chance to do this.
Yeah.
But Terrence here and Tortoise Johnny, Mixed Crypto Arts, he's right there.
Hey, what's up, brother?
He's in the Philippines with you there.
Yeah,
Joshua Halo. Yeah, droning on it again and again. I appreciate the tall boy reference. Samantha, who's on our team,
Hey.
awesome. Very excited. Crypto Safety 24/7. Eli's here. Ari, Facing Reality. Jacques, let's go. Charts Art is in the house. Fantastic. David Gomez. David Lee. David Lee's your man. Went all the way from Southwestern Indiana. He will do whatever he can. He wants to go to the Philippines and hug your neck, dude.
You guys all need to come over, man. Seriously.
And look who's here. Apple. Hey. What's up? Let's go. Fantastic. And Rag stopping in to give his nod to you as well. Hey. This is it. Marcos is here. Hex Squid is here. Fallen, Comrade, Magnus, Allon, Tribal Sounds, Forrest, good to see you, buddy. MJ Money is here. Let's see, Mobius. I want to make sure I say hello to everybody. Renan, I assume that's who Renan is.
Yep, he's part of our team.
Okay, Joanna.
So is Joanna. Yep.
Joanna. Gabriel is here.
And so is Gabriel.
Paul, Paul is here. Some of these names I don't know.
Yep, it's the whole team. Yep.
Mr. Rafferty, all these people staying up late. Gabriel Gomez. Let's see who else is here. Sandy Beach, thanks for stopping by. Appreciate you. Hello. Rich Liberation is here, and then the OG of all OGs in Hex, Briz. Looks like the Empire crest of Star Wars. That star in the middle is the sun. Right, that's from the Philippines flag, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Fantastic. Marinella is here. Let's see who else. I want to make sure I say hello to everyone.
Yeah, Robert, you forgot to get into the chat, man.
Mutables here. Chris and Faith and Jeff Woods. Amazing people in the Philippines. Absolutely. Let's see. This is fantastic. You got a lot of support, man, already, and it's only going to grow from here. We are an amazing community. Let's see who are so many folks.
And I just need to point out as well, Matt, I mean, just the support that you and the Texan team have given us. I mean, it's amazing. And it's so wonderful seeing like you said, right, the East and the West come together.
Yeah.
And how they're meshing and the synergy that's happening. And I mean, it's just been such an amazing blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. Uncle Will. Well, and that's the thing that's so great is, that's what communication networks and YouTube and StreamYard and all of these technical tools have enabled us to see the humanity in one another. And I think that that's the thing that, when you look back and read your Bible and what's happened out, what is civilization, right? What is the civilized society? And, in America, we have this idea that, hold on, everyone is created in the image of God, has value and has rights that are not given to them by the state. In this world, I think about it. People want to pit people against each other because they look differently or they got a different skin color or they don't believe the same thing. And at the end of the day, I think when you think about what the whole story of the Bible is, it's setting the captives free. And, as you look at the gospel itself, it says the only true freedom is the freedom in Christ Jesus, right? It's not in money. It's not in authority. It's not in riches. And what is the currency? And that's a reminder I always want to make to people. Gold is fine. Money is fine. They're great tools. But I'll tell you what, the currency of God is peace in your heart, no matter what. And I think about that in your family. When you've got tough relationships, you're dealing with addiction or substance abuse or mental illness, you're dealing with bondage. And so I believe that the blockchain is being used. God is using this tool to draw his people and say, hey, you need to know who I am. And I'm going to put this carrot on a stick and you're going to chase after it because you think that if you had this money, you'd finally have peace. But peace doesn't come from money. And that to me is one of the most amazing things about this is you may find that you gain the whole world. Just don't lose your soul, folks. That's the whole message here. And to me, it's a beautiful thing serving people in churches across the Philippines, which really impacts people that are struggling. And it's just this world is abundant. God made this world abundantly,
Exactly.
and we
Exactly.
have an opportunity to come together in community to unlock it. And that to me is just an absolutely beautiful thing. And honestly, John, I consider this to be a part of an extension of my own calling is serving you. And when you consider others in addition to yourself, I want you to be successful, not just because it's you, but because this is what we're supposed to do, I believe, here, right? My dad died at 73. I'm 50 years old now. And I'm like, what am I going to do with these last 25 years? We got to put our hands, our creative process, all of these things together to say, let's think about others in addition to ourselves. And that's where the value ultimately comes from. So, dude, how do people get in contact with you? Like, do they go through
With
Telegram?
me?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess the best place would be Twitter. I mean, that doesn't get too cluttered. So it's FireStarter_88.
Okay.
And then LinkedIn as well, I guess, is a good place. Those are the places that don't get too cluttered. But in the chat, I mean, in the Telegram chat, I mean, I'm in there, right? So
Yeah.
just at me and
So Telegram, DM, or whatever.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you. Thanks for being in here.
Same,
Folks,
dude.
thanks for joining. This is awesome. This is a treat for me because I've been we've been talking about this for a year.
We've been talking about this. Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
we can't say it, all this stuff. Oh my gosh. Thanks, guys, for being here and sharing in this. This is one of many things. But are you going to also start doing some streaming? Are we going to be able to see you? Are you going to be doing some things online?
Eventually, yeah. I've already. I mean, I have a YouTube channel. It is FireStarter, but I haven't quite gotten it off the ground just yet. I've just been so busy.
Yeah.
Like with this, just so much. But yes, eventually I will make it a point to put myself out there, man.
Good. Well, people will look forward
Pastor Roy.
Yeah, I know. I saw him there. I was like, yay, Roy's here. I just know that people are going to look forward to hearing your heart and hearing, just updates and things like that. Obviously, you'll be in Telegram, but I'm going to encourage you to share these things because it's Richard said this many times. All this is a shared fiction, and the value is by decree. And we decree it in community, right? We contribute into a immutable contract. You can't make someone do it. But what happens is so special when people come together and they literally lock up principal for interest and they literally believe in the future of something together. That's where this, continues to unlock value. So I appreciate you so much. And I just thank you for the opportunity to give me this story of Ophir to talk about. It's special. It is very, very special. So
it's just the beginning, right?
Yeah. So you get to hit the hay here. It's late there in the Philippines. Folks, thanks for joining the Pulse today. Another project utilizing the endowment token contract. It's called Ophir. You can find it at ophir.app. You can connect with FireStarter_88 there in Telegram. Join that if you want to help and be a part of volunteering. Maybe you're just going to serve a couple hours, maybe in a different time zone for the folks in the Ophir group. But this is a really unique opportunity. And there are benefits to people who volunteer their time to help out projects. And that's something else that I think is really cool and a blessing to people. But I just encourage you to just be on alert. The Ophir project will be coming out here in the next couple months with a donation phase to serve the people within the Philippines. John, thanks for your time. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, man. Thank you for being so faithful to the call and such a tremendous blessing to me and the entire team and the community.
Well, tell Carmen I said hello and the kids, and take care of yourself. Get some rest, man, and we'll catch you very, very soon. Thanks, man.
God bless.
See
you guys.
Folks, I've been waiting for so long to share this story with you. Fear.app. It's all a story, folks. Everything's a story. Gold's a story. We are here for a very limited amount of time. And I think that the hope that the blockchain brings through, stories like this is what it's about. This future of building digital nations and literally outside of the hands of government and centralized planners it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life. And we're seeing that in Texas. We're seeing that in the Philippines, and who knows where else we'll see that as well. But I'm going to remind you of what I said at the beginning. Even in, for example, Hex, where there's maybe 200,000 people, it's not a lot of people. And that unlocks a tremendous billions of dollars of value and has made tremendous impacts on people's lives. And it's been in a relatively short amount of time. So imagine being a part of projects where the people of the Philippines come together and they see that John is bearing gifts. He's coming to give them a gift of an endowment of sustainability, of hope and a future. And really that's an extension of not John, that's an extension of what God's doing in this world through his heart, because literally God literally took him to the very, very edge. And it's almost like, I just imagine this, right? I just imagine, Isaac and Jacob, the raising of the knife, and literally God saying, no, hold on, I've got provision for you. Some of this is a test, folks. Where is your heart? Is your heart for yourself? Is your heart for other people? I'm going to tell you right now, if you want to succeed in the blockchain, you realize that it's all about community. That's what unlocks it all. And there's so much more value in this than it is just money. And so John is a great ambassador for the Philippines. And just, these things are too much of a coincidence to not be the miraculous. So we just praise God for what he's doing in this world through John and his team. And we just, if this is something that resonates with you, go after it. But just like the Texan token, man, we're in politics and all this stuff, just not for everybody. And so, but it doesn't need to be for everybody. It needs to be for a group of people who are committed to serving one another. So folks, thanks for joining the Pulse today. My name is Matt. This is Crypto Heartbeat, and do not mess with Texas or now the Philippines. Take care, folks.